President Trump on the road in Missouri today, pushing his agenda amid new fallout over threatening to pull security clearances from former Obama administration officials.
We don't apologize for America anymore. We stand up for America. We stand up for the patriots who defend America. The way we keep America great is to make at least reasonable, I'm not saying at least reasonable, at least fair trade deals, not stupid trade deals like we've put up with for 25 years. Democrats who are going so far left that nobody can believe it. They want open borders and crime's okay. We want strong borders and we want no crime. Other than that, we're very similar.
President Trump not addressing the controversy over security clearances, while Democrats and the media are slamming him over it.
The White House today releasing an enemies list, a list of former national security officials.
That is not what you see in a democracy. That is exactly what you see in authoritarian regimes.
This is an abuse of executive power. This is Erdogan's Turkey.
This is the sort of attack on free speech, the press, and the rights of individuals to speak out in our country that really doesn't serve the president well.
It is an autocratic kind of move. It's the kind of thing you'd see in a banana republic.
I have been in the meetings for over 20 years. This is so extraordinary. The last thing you want in intelligence is partisanship.
As you notice, Greg, the president did not even mention it today, so it's like it was here today, gone tomorrow, and it's like it's not going to happen, but he got everybody riled up.
In Trump land, there's no what we're seeing is backlash or fallout. There's no such thing as backlash or fallout anymore because it's indistinguishable from how the press acts every day. So when they go on there and they pull out their hair, we're all like, so what? This is how you react when he sneezes. So this doesn't mean anything to us. And then you have the Dems saying stuff like, well, the revoking of the security clearances or a deflection. That's the worst deflection ever then, because he's responding. He's actually responding to the collusion accusations by saying you're colluding too, and I'm taking away your clearances. That's not a deflection. A deflection is actually trying to change the subject. What Trump does is he intensifies the subject. If you're saying something, he goes, oh yeah, I'm saying this, and then pretty soon he turns it into another story.
He runs to the light.
He runs to, he's like a moth to the flame, which is a terrible analogy.
But in some ways, Kennedy, I wonder about him having lived in the New York media market for so long, right? And it's rough and tumble, and it's crazy, and there's all these things, even though it is sort of diminishing by the day. But in New York, he's dealt with this kind of thing a long time, and we know that in his business career, he would figure out how to utilize the media, change the subject, get the deal done. And I do think the security clearance thing was something he thought of, but is probably not going to do.
I don't think, and I think Paul Ryan was right, and that he's essentially just trolling people, which is fine, and that's not illegal, and that's not treasonous. But in the hypercritical response of some Democrats, you know, they talk about making sure that the security apparatus and intelligence agencies and officials are not partisan. But you have James Clapper and John Brennan and James Comey who are hyper-partisan. They're the ones James Comey stood before Congress, as you well remember, Congressman Chaffetz, stood before Congress and basically talked about how objective and politically agnostic he was. And he's sitting here tweeting, telling people to go vote for Democrats, which is fine. You can have free speech. You can be completely against the president. You can have any political opinion you want. But we know what the surveillance state was capable of. We know the power that these people have and the backdoor searches they were able to do on millions of Americans. And Lord only knows where that information has gone. And it seems like in some cases they are, in fact, using it to their economic monetary advantage.
I'm not sure. Okay, well, Juan, I'll let you respond to that.
That's wacky. I mean, there's no evidence that they've used it to any economic advantage. So Sarah Huckabee Sanders said, oh, they've monetized it. And it was like, well, so what did they do? Did they, like, go get a security briefing from somebody and then sell the information to the Russians? I don't think so. I don't even think that she really meant that. What she's suggesting is, oh, maybe because they have a job working at one of the networks or they gave a speech or they wrote a book. But again, nobody has come forward and said that's the case. I mean, this is so silly. And by the way, this is the hole in your argument. The Wall Street Journal's editorial page this morning said, dumb idea. I don't think there are any far-left bunch of Democrat wackos on the Wall Street Journal editorial board.
But that's actually, Jason, why I said that I think that he threw it out there as chum in the water. Everybody rose to it, but it probably is not going to go anywhere.
Well, and Senator Rand Paul, I think, was one of the very first people to bring this up. And it does beg the question, these people are former employees. Why do they need to continue to get that? If they want an original classification authority, which is the legal term in which the president and certain other people can deem somebody or give them a security clearance, then do that. If Secretary Pompeo wants to go back and talk to maybe Colin Powell because they're dealing with Saudi Arabia and they want the historical knowledge, then just go and give him a security clearance.
Right.
But they don't need a blanket one, so they can continue to be fed information, which then they go on television and go to companies and say, hey, I still get this
That information and that knowledge is implicit. I mean, but that's why you hire someone like John Brennan to be a correspondent at MSNBC. I don't have a problem with someone like that. I don't have a problem with James Comey going out and writing a book and making money. But the idea that you have to trust me because I have the secret information and I'm going to keep you safe because I know better than everybody else, I'm sorry, but I'm resentful of that attitude.
Well,
and it seems like they're gathering together to create a cabal.
Kennedy, you're just wrong. It's just the wrong
I'm not
premise.
wrong. There's nothing wrong about what I just said.
Well, let me explain to you that, in fact, none of these people, two of them don't even have security clearance on the list, right? McCabe and Comey don't even have it.
Okay, because they were read out, that doesn't mean they don't have security.
Hang on. Yeah, and none of them says that they are regularly going back to get security briefings. They simply have the clearance. 4 million Americans have security clearance. And this is unprecedented for anybody to go back now and try to take the whole premise, by the way, in response to you. Let me finish. In response to you, the whole premise is these folks then would have knowledge that when somebody then comes to them and says, hey, can you help me? Did you go through a situation with Iran? Did you go through a situation in Iraq? Here's what I'm thinking. What do you think, sir? You've been through this. That's all this is about.
But Greg is right. The hyper reaction to this was way over the top. It's not a suppression of any of their First Amendment rights. It doesn't do anything like that.
Well, also because it hasn't happened. And Greg, I think that when I was read out, like you sign a thing that says I no longer have a security clearance, and you walk away and you're walled off, and you don't have access to your computer. Like there's a high side and a low side, and it's actually quite stark. It doesn't mean that you don't have maybe people you can call in the agency who might tell you something, but that's leaks. And if there was something illegal that happened, maybe we need another Inspector General report. But I do want to talk about the president's ability to change the subject, intensify the subject. Basically, he's spinning a lot of plates all at once while managing the policy. And today he introduced a few other things at the VA speech. And I do think it is hard for people to keep up.
And I don't know if you can blame him for that.
No, it's fine.
I mean, the fact is, he's not a normal politician. A politician wakes up in the morning, they have their policy breakfast, then they talk to somebody, then they have their policy lunch, then they're thinking about writing something. By the time it's 3 o'clock for Trump, he's already done 18 things. And I do say, I always go back to my original theory that it's because he has so much energy because he doesn't drink. It's like if you don't drink, you just, you're up at 5 in the morning, you can do anything. And it really is kind of amazing. He's decided to run a race, and he's daring everybody to keep up with him.
Yeah.
You may not like the direction of where he's running, but he's saying, if you want to keep up with me, keep up with me.
So how do they figure out how to respond when it's warranted?
Oh, I know.
Because he thrives in the chaos.
Here's the answer.
Okay.
Give him a drink.
Oh, terrible.
I think
that works with me, though, Juan.
I'm going to try it with you.
Well, just wait till my one more thing, because you're going to be a very happy man. I think what he does is he gauges the reaction, and I think that's why Paul Ryan said, maybe we do need to look at whether or not someone has continued clearance after they leave government work. But at the same time, he said he's just trolling people. And so he essentially goes and sees what the hysterical reaction is from the left. And if it is so hysterical that their heads explode and there's brain bits on the walls, that for the president is a minor victory, because we're not talking about Helsinki.
Kennedy, what
we're
happens
not talking about Russia.
What happens when he calls all of us enemy of the American people? When he tries to pull NBC's license?
Only fake news.
When he says
not everybody.
Washington Post is Amazon's.
That's a what if as opposed
to a what
if.
He says these things about NBC, Washington Post. He goes after everybody. Enemy of the American people. That's his words.
No, he's talking about people he believes are misleading leading America. He's not saying everybody. And by the way, where did he learn this? He learned this from us. This is a guy who's learned how to fight from cable news. This is a relatively new practice in his party. He wasn't like this before. He's like this now. So I think we're hypocrites if we go after him for doing exactly what we do. By the way, we have great news. North Korea, right? Is that great news, potentially? Dismantling? Yeah, I know it should be met with skepticism. But I find it troubling to see people rooting against this because if there is peace, it might make him look good.
They themselves are saying they're skeptical.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, you should be. But the fact is, if there's a possibility of lasting peace, how can you be rooting against it?
Did somebody root against it?
I think everybody who trashes, I think everybody who can't stand Trump doesn't want this to work.
Everybody that
and I don't think that's mind reading. I think it's pretty obvious.
It's inconceivable, though. It really is. I mean, if we're at a point, if North Korea, according to President Obama, if that was our greatest global foe, and if we're able to neutralize that situation, how could you do anything but cheer for that as a human being, let alone an American?
I think that the people you're talking about did cheer for it at the summit itself, and was like, well, if
they had no choice.
And then when they didn't come to the meeting and they did their usual thing, they're like, well, we told you so. But all along, the administration has said we were very clear-eyed about this. We know that there were going to be stops and starts.
But it's still compared to 6 months ago, 8 months ago. You cannot deny we have made progress.
Oh yeah, you check with President Trump on this because I think he's been indicating he's not happy at the lack of progress
since his.
He's impatient about everything.
Oh,
Good for him.